being this is just a training, okay, being this is such a training, I don't think we're gonna do roll call or anything. We're just gonna go for it. Go, Kevin.
Well, thanks. Again, my apologies for messing it up the last time, but I'm glad you're all here. I'm glad to see you, but I sure wish I was over there, and I will come over there and see you. We'll work that out. I like to do that. It's the best part of the job. And if it wasn't in the job description, I would ask for it. This is a statewide organization, and by golly, I want to travel statewide. So next time I get a chance, we'll connect in person. But for purposes of this evening, and I'll share my screen here in a second. I just want to introduce myself. I got a couple slides about the organization, but I'll before we're all lost in the PowerPoint and we can still see each other, just tell you a little bit about the organization. Some of you may know more than others, and about my role with the organization. My name is Kevin Baumer. I'm the executive director of the Colorado Municipal League. I have been executive director since 2019. My predecessor, Sam Mamet, some of you may know, who was a character, made sure that my first, and still is a character because we talk on a regular basis, he made sure that he timed his last day so that my first day was April Fool's Day on 2019. And that's no joke. But in any event, I've been the executive director since then, but I've been with CML since 1999. I started in October of 99 and was in essentially a meeting and events planning role for a whopping 6 months until a lobbying position opened up. And then I did that for 19 years and finishing as deputy director before the board hired me as executive director. The CML board is what governs the league. I'll talk about that in a second, just as a little bit of an intro. But it's a 21-member board that's elected by CML members, which is all of you and 269 other municipalities at our annual business meeting at our annual conference. And so I am their direct report. It's sort of like having 21 bosses, and I love it. And then I have a small staff that works under me, and talk a little bit about that as well. So the league's headquarters are in Denver, close to the Capitol. It's a little bit of a ghost town right now. We're still closed to outside meetings. A lot of our traffic is related to the legislative session and meetings around that. But the board and our policy committee have continued to meet virtually. And so the staff is in, but not everyone all at once. And, we can function that way for now, but it's not ideal forever. But aside from these extraordinary times, the league building is there for you as Colorado Municipal League members, and certainly if you're on private business in Denver. I mean, why would you ever want to come to Denver? But if you do, you've got a home away from home, and it literally is your building, our members' building. So let me go ahead and share my screen. I already checked to see if I could, and I can. Let me do one thing first.
Can I interrupt a second?
Yeah, of course.
The only thing is I got a text message from somebody who's by phone, and they felt like they were only able to join in by phone. Should they be able to see the screen? I guess that's a question for Corinne.
If they have a computer.
I think so.
Or Zoom on their phone. I've had to do that before.
Oh, yeah.
But if it's a dial in and audio only, then yeah, that's going to be difficult. Mayor, shall I go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Just interrupt me if we need to pause and help someone get
All right.
into the meeting. So I was asked to talk about a handful of things. I call it municipal elected office and best practices. It's really about just talking about municipal government and governance, and the individual roles and responsibilities of elected officials, relationship to staff, And the way that not only the roles and responsibilities of individual elected officials, but also, what your job description is, generally speaking. And there are some variations depending on municipalities, but generally speaking, this is municipal elected office and best practices. So just a little bit I'm going to do, because I did a little bit of this already. What is CML? Why am I here? What is it? What is the town of Paonia's role in Colorado Municipal League? As I mentioned, the organization is 270 member municipalities. That is every municipality in the state, save for 2 officially incorporated municipalities. Now, some of you may be Colorado geography experts and know certainly where Saguache is. But if you know where the town of Bonanza City is, which is northwest of Saguache, then you get our gold star, especially since even though it's officially incorporated, I think it only has like 1 permanent resident. They haven't had an election or passed a budget in years and will eventually be dissolved. Go ahead.
Kevin?
Yeah.
Can I stop you for just a second?
Yes, of course.
So the people who are on the phone, if you're on the Zoom app and enter the meeting code, you can see the screen. All right, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Carry
The
on.
other town is Sheridan Lake, which is way out on the Eastern Plains, south of Cheyenne Wells. It's my mission, at least before I retire, to try to rope them in as the only functioning municipality that's not a member of CML. In fact, I think the board put it in my performance plan. So anyway, 270 municipalities, which is basically the entire municipal population of the state. And the league, like 48 other state leagues, Hawaii being the only state that doesn't have a municipal league, and only because they officially don't have municipalities, they just have counties. Like 48 other states, have a municipal league that was established around the 20s. There's a progressive movement at the time. CML was established, like many of the state leagues, on the campuses of higher education. CU Boulder was the birthplace of CML, almost, and we're gearing up for that big birthday coming up, almost 100 years ago. I mentioned the league's governed by a 21-member executive board. Your peers and colleagues elected at large at the annual business meeting at the annual conference. And I'll talk a little bit about how that happens towards the end. There's a staff of 14 full-time, 2 part-time employees, so we're pretty lean and mean. And the league is primarily set up for a couple of main reasons. One, the day-to-day operations of the league, the mission are to, it's a 3-legged stool: advocacy, information, and training supporting exceptional municipal governance. So this is maybe an information and training part. A lot of folks recognize the league for our advocacy. I mentioned I worked in the State House on the league's and CML members' behalf for 19 sessions. We also advocate in the Court of Legal Opinion, advocating for municipalities by filing briefs on their behalf when there's municipal issues that come up in court. But while advocacy may get a lot of the spotlight, to me, the bread and butter of helping municipalities is in the information and training. Because no one wants to be a lobbyist, but everyone wants to be, a better elected official, a better town administrator, a better town attorney. So that is what we focus on every day. How can we advocate, inform, and train our members even better? That it's all driven by long-term vision that, if we do all this, and individual municipalities and their elected officials and staff are better, more informed, and enjoy their jobs more, makes us stronger. All municipalities become stronger when we're all focused on the same things. And so the league really is driven by that. That's part of our strategic plan, which I can bore you with a lot of details on that some other time. But the basics are CML belongs to our members because it exists for our members and because of our members. The league, I'm gonna picking up some background noise from someone there. I'm sorry. But but the league literally can't exist without our members. And the reason is that we are, oops, advanced too soon there. Sorry. The league is primarily funded by member dues. Now, you all passed a budget that hopefully included your 2022 municipal dues. I think they did. And we're in the process of bringing all those in. We're about 70% there, so we're in good shape. But the league is almost 90% funded by a little bit less than that by municipal dues. And that's would scare a lot of my colleagues and saying, wow, you know, what happens if you lose a lot of members? I'm not afraid of that, because we only would ever risk losing members if we weren't working on behalf of our members. I always know who my bosses are. It's all of you. It's all the municipal officials. And I don't care if it's Denver to Dove Creek or anywhere in between. Every municipality is an important member of CML, and we work for our members because our members belong to CML. One of these days, I'm gonna have to change that picture of the league building. If any of you have ever been there, that is from 1998 when the league building was built. The vegetation looks so much better around that now. But anyway, that is the league headquarters, your home away from home, and headquarters for everything municipal. One big thing is that, like municipal elected official offices, the league is nonpartisan. We identify ourselves as a nonpartisan, nonprofit association of municipalities. And so when we advocate in any way, any information that we provide, any training that we provide, it's about best municipal practices and policy devoid of partisan issues. And that's really important, because that gives us a lot of recognition within the State House on both sides of the aisle, that we really, doesn't matter what the party issues are, we advocate for municipalities. Very quickly, by the numbers, this slide needs a little updating. There's 104 home rule municipalities now, and by virtue of math, 167 statutory municipalities, like the town of Paonia. There is one territorial charter, which is always a fun little trivia game. The town of Georgetown is still operating under a charter that was adopted when Colorado was a territory. And the fun little tidbit about that is that when Georgetown wants to change its charter, it actually has to be done through state legislation at the State House. Fortunately, they don't have to do that very often. I got the pleasure of doing the last one of some updates to their charter and modernizing some things, but it was very well received by legislators who found it very novel. At some point in time, most municipalities had a territorial charter before Colorado became a state. Everyone started out as a statutory municipality, and then over the years, some have chosen to go home rule. Paonia is one of the statutory municipalities, as I mentioned, and that is going to change a little bit, and I'll identify it when I'm talking about the form of government down the road here, and what that means. But by and large, it's the principles that I'll be talking about are as applicable to home rule municipalities as they are to statutory municipalities. You are part of a very small club. It may seem like a lot, but 1,830 elected officials across 270 municipalities is a pretty small and exclusive club. It's a little larger mailing list than my colleague at the counties with the county commissioners, but it's still pretty small. So I hope you all give yourself a pat on the back, because that is a pretty big deal, whether you got talked into running for the board, or or there was a vacancy that you applied for. It's a big deal. We think it's a big deal. You're very important, and we're going to talk a little bit about how it's important to all work together. Talk about municipal finance a little bit more. That's a little bit bigger discussion for a little different time, but it does impact a lot of what you do, because your finances are what drive a lot of the decisions you make. And there's a lot of interesting conversations we have about that. That's a little snapshot of municipal finance. Okay, let's get into talking about your role as a municipal elected official. I'm going to start off, and I'm going to use the term generally, because as a statutory municipality, you are a board and you don't have a manager, you have an administrator, but the form of government that I'm generally going to be talking about is a council manager form of government, the role of an elected official, talking about how to embrace a new role if you have one, and when it's changing. So let's dive into that. The council manager form of government has two basic features, and in your case, an elected board to decide policy questions, and a professionally trained manager or administrator hired by trustees to govern the municipal administration. Now, it's important in this general slide to acknowledge that statutory municipalities through their ordinances and whatever have different elements of delegation of administration to the administrator. So it's really important that you all are clear on that. But generally, the idea is that the town board talks with each other, makes decisions, casts votes, signified probably in the greatest way by the budget you adopt every year, but also at more granular level. You're painting the big picture. You are deciding what the future of Paonia looks like, but all of those individual decisions that you make. The hardest part oftentimes is then saying, okay, now that we have done that, then you hand off to your staff, even your small staff, to make those changes or implement that policy that you've identified, to take that picture that you've painted and actually turn it into something concrete and something actual. So it involves a level of trust. You entrust the details of administration and the implementation of your policy to you, primarily your direct reports, and then from there, some organization charts are obviously deeper than others depending on the size of the municipality, but then let that direct report then direct his or her direct reports. That's how it works in practice. Again, every municipality is a little bit different, but it's really clear that as a town board, that you and your staff are on the same page as to what that means and how it works. Because when difficult times come or there's a challenging issue, then it helps to be crystal clear on that. So here's what it looks like, the council manager form of government. The voters elect you, you hire your administrator. Your administrator then directs department heads. The reason why this, I don't know if it's necessarily a hierarchy, although voters definitely like to be at the top and they want to think they're at the top, but voters that put you into office and everyone below that, the reason it's kind of like a hierarchy is you never want to jump in line. Citizens will certainly talk to you, and they may talk to your administrator, they may talk to department heads, but it's really important to the greatest extent possible, and again, with any locally appropriate agreements you have, that you respect that linear approach, particularly in your role as an elected official. So let's talk about what those roles are, and each one of these will be on an individual slide, so I'll skip the long list here, but these are the roles that I'm going to be talking about. Let's talk about setting public policy. So the hardest part about public policy is you have to kind of crystal ball what municipal government can do, what you can do as a board, not what you individually want to do, but also what you think and in collaboration with your colleagues are in the best interest of the public and the town. So setting public policy involves a very high level of trying to understand the town, its needs, and what you think is best. Very difficult, especially when there's multiple voices involved. Next role is to be professional, though. And in doing all of this, you got to understand that even if sometimes people don't talk to you, and I'm talking about people, general public, talk to you in the most respectful way or the most productive way, they do expect you to be professional and they expect you to be efficient. If you are irrational, you're all over the place in your decision making, that will oftentimes cause folks to react. You want to be rational, analytical, utilize your staff, your trained professionals to help you out, make you look better in the process, and then ensure through a process of constant review that your programs and policies are achieving that policy that you decided as a board that you wanted to implement. The the goal here is finding balance, taking in those public expectations, managing them along with your own, and then being a good steward of public resources, whether that's time or money. It's important to be able to find that balance. You have to be accountable. So once you are elected or appointed to fill a vacancy and hopefully subsequently elected, you represent everyone, not just the people that supported you in your candidacy or those that helped you in your appointment. You represent everyone, even those that say, I'll never vote for you. I don't like you. You're not doing what I think you should be doing. You still represent them. All those folks, whether they're for you or against you, for what you're supporting or against it, they have a right to be heard. They should be acknowledged, because love it or hate it, the public involvement is essential for the legitimacy. And it ties back into that decision making, and particularly we'll talk about how you explain how you are voting or what you are supporting. This is a challenge, especially when you have big issues facing you right now, but you want to try and be a big picture thinker. Most of the decisions that you are making right now, while some of them are certainly going to affect the short term, most of you are going to be out of office by the time the longer term decisions really take hold. So it's important to think about not just what is happening right now, but the decisions I'm making right now. What is that going to mean for the town of Paonia 10 years from now? And do I like that outcome? Do I want to try something different, because what may be a good short-term solution may not be the best long-term solution? How do I talk to my colleagues about that? It's important to think beyond today's constraints and see, where amongst yourselves and others in the community there might be connections and relationships, to talk about those longer-term visions and challenges, and talk about them not just in how do I deal with this thing that's right in front of my face, but what's going to be the best thing for all of us, down the road. Being a big picture thinker is really critical to the position you are in. You also have to be a good steward. Look, you don't have the keys to Fort Knox, right? Being a good steward means the steward of public resources, but it also means understanding those that are coming to talk to you about their concerns. Listen to them, respect them, listen to their points of view, and understand that in this process of being a good steward, not being able to do everything that everyone wants, or anything that anyone wants, you're going to have to make some decisions that may not ultimately be popular with a few or a great many, because they'll want you to do the easy thing or the most expensive thing or the bright shiny thing right now. But part of that being a big picture thinker is what's going to be the biggest and best thing for Paonia in the greater good and a common vision. Really important as a board, if you can identify a common vision, even if it's not unanimous, as close to that as possible. And that involves patience, conversation, and understanding. You have to be an advocate for the town. Look, you are the people that citizens will come to first when they have a concern, a problem, a question, or whatever. And so you have to act in a role as a customer service representative. Hey, the town's doing this, or we're going to start this program, or accept that feedback. What did you think about our new incentive to do this, or our new program to do that? People will come to you because whether it's accurate or not, they see you individually as the most responsive to their concerns. Sometimes to their detriment, they may see you as, I want to go to the mayor and get this problem solved, as if Mary can just solve everything with one vote and it's done, right? Doesn't work like that. It takes the entire group together. But as individuals, citizens will want to come to you and talk to you. And then it's important to then say, well, here's the best thing the town can do. Here are the services the town provides. And if there's something that it needs to come back in discussion, either as an elected body or with your staff, then you do that. But always support your town, always support the things you're doing, and try to connect citizens to them. Be a community builder. It's all being about positive and moving forward. Really hard when there's challenging times, but you're in a very unique role to be able to provide leadership and be a model for consensus building among disparate voices in town. You want to try and help foster relationships that help people work through differences, both internally as a board, and maybe differences in vision with staff. But the best place to do it, and oftentimes the hardest place to do it, is in town board meetings, where you want to provide a forum for everyone to be heard, but it's got to be done the right way. It's got to be done respectfully, and it's got to be done oftentimes concisely. And that I know is difficult for a lot of municipalities. People want to be heard, but in the same respect, you can't let town board meetings go till 3 a.m. And so working on that balance is important, but working with each other and help building consensus on the right way to do it is critical to being a community builder. Look, you have to be a decision maker. Last time I checked, and I check a lot, there's no one that gets to vote maybe on anything. Now, in certain circumstances, you may have to recuse yourself because of a personal interest in a decision, something related to ethics, but you have to vote yes or no. And it's kind of like being a judge, only you're not one vote that gets to decide everything, but there's no maybe votes. And that's not an easy role, because people are watching to see how you vote and what you decide, so they can decide whether you're with them or against them. And oftentimes it comes down to that on a single issue. It's really important that you be decisive and just in your decision. I talked about that before. You want to be able to say, without making a speech, but be able to provide your reasons why you are supporting something, voting yes, or opposing something and voting no, whether it be during a board meeting or oftentimes in other conversations. That's what you need to determine. I see all the time in the state legislature, and it's just getting so bad, is that these committee hearings, they go forever because you have a 7, 9, 13 member committee, and everyone takes 10 minutes to explain why they're voting yes or no. It's shocking that they get as much done as they do sometimes, because they spend so much time talking about how they're going to vote instead of actually just voting. You want to provide oversight. So again, this is very specific to your arrangement, but as it is in every municipality. But you hire and direct your administrator in this council manager form of system, that form of government, the system that you have, and any other direct reports you have, your contract attorney, for example, are accountable to you as a board. It's just really critical that you respect the roles that you are in versus the roles that they are in. And I go back to that, hierarchy or flow chart or whatever you want to call it. You're a smaller organization, but it doesn't matter whether you're small or large. You wouldn't want a mayor pro tem, any trustee, going and telling someone in a specific department, how to do their job. That should flow through your direct report if there's a concern about something in a department or whatever. Again, I know it's in a small municipality, those lines are closer together, everyone's closer together. And a lot of the questions I get is, well, does that mean I can't ever talk to anyone that's an employee of the town because I'm going to be stepping outside? Well, of course not, especially in a small town where everyone knows everyone. It's just that line that you may cross when you are not acting as a member of the board, but you are acting as a manager and trying to direct individually what someone should be doing. That's where it starts to get more challenging, because again, your role as a board in setting policy is done as a body and not as an individual. So we can talk more about that if you want to in Q&A, but make sure that to the greatest extent possible, you're providing that oversight and respecting those roles. And then last but not least, this shouldn't even have to be on here, but I do it because it's important. Be ethical. As a CIRSA member, I don't know if this will show up on the screen, kinda. You all should have or should have received this book. It's Ethics, Liability, and Best Practices for Elected Officials. It's a handbook. It's second edition, 2019. CIRSA and CML teamed up on that. If you don't have one, tell Corinne to let me know, and either CIRSA or I will send one to you. It's a quick read. It's a signed reading. I'm assigning it to you if you've not read it, because and if CIRSA folks were talking to you, they might put the fear of God into you. There are things that elected officials can do that not only place the town at risk and liability, but also individuals. And that's the really scary part, right? So anyway, just make sure that you're complying with all ethical guidelines. Don't participate in any decisions that could personally benefit you or your business. Don't hold an interest in any contracts. And if you don't have that booklet, let Corinne know and I'll make sure you get some. It's pretty basic stuff, but it's important that everyone read that. Okay. So in summary, the public expects and deserves your best. Be honest, make decisions that put the community first. When you're making decisions, especially when you're doing it in the public forum of the board meeting, be open and fair. Make sure you listen to everyone, give them respect, even if they're not giving you respect, and just listen, let everyone make their point appropriately and within appropriate constraints, but make sure they have a chance to be heard. You want to be accountable and professional, have the highest ethical standards in the way you behave, certainly lawful and ethical conduct, all reflected in your personal character, which you should show off in a positive way every chance you get. Both, and I'll talk about this in a second, both in the public forum, but whenever you're walking around town, because guess what? You don't get to take that hat off of being an elected official when you are elsewhere other than a board meeting. So I put this slide in a lot of times when I talk to city councils or town boards, they've had a major shift after an election, and I talk about just embracing your new role and, more importantly, knowing when it's changed, because it can have a dramatic effect on your effectiveness. First of all, if you're newly elected or appointed, you were a citizen before, you're an official now, and that's probably the most critical one. But regardless if you're brand new or not, you may have been on the outside, you may have shifted to the inside. That can go both ways. Minority, majority, same thing. This often happens with newly elected or appointed, sometimes with re-elected and reappointed, but you may have been a critic about something. But when you're holding office as a town board member, you're a representative, whether it's something you agree with or not. That which you have been critical about before, you represent, even if you're making efforts to try and change something. A lot of people get elected, come in and say, I got one thing. There's one thing I want to do, and that's it. But you still have to vote on all these other things. So you may have been a proponent of a single issue, but all these board meetings that you sit through and all these things that you have that are brought before you, like I said, there's no maybe votes. You have to vote yes or no. So you're in a position of having to make decisions on all sorts of issues. And it's important that you embrace that, again, for that long-term vision of the town, even those things that are maybe outside of your core areas of interest. Again, recognize when your role is changing. When you became elected or when you're appointed, you're the ultimate insider. Like I said, everyone in town sees you in that role and they think you can solve their problem. They're sure going to tell you if they don't like something. I don't imagine, and I don't think I'm going out on a limb here, none of you probably have a whole bunch of people coming up to you and say, gosh, thank you for spending all the time as a board member. We appreciate your sacrifice. Hey, thanks for everything you do. Elected officials, local elected officials, don't get a lot of thanks and gratitude. They usually hear most when people are cranky about something or don't like something, and that's okay, because it helps you focus on what's at hand. But just know that you are seen as the one that can solve problems. So problems are going to be what you hear about the most. I talked about this before. Misunderstanding your role can increase liability for yourself and the town, but maybe more critically, it can reduce your own effectiveness and create a lot of confusion, particularly with staff. And I'll come back to that in a future slide. So being part of an effective decision-making body requires collaboration and consensus building among diverse personalities and beliefs. I'm going to come back to that as well, because it has a lot to do with how you individually relate to each other, and what that ultimate challenge of the differences that each of you have, and how challenging that can be for a deliberative body. Why does this matter? Why does individual conduct matter? Because your conduct directly impacts your effectiveness. If you come in with the proverbial dark cloud over your head all the time, you're grumbling at folks, you're not happy about anything, and that is flowing out of you, is there any reason to expect that that's not going to start to impact others and bring them down too? Now, everyone has a bad day. I'm not talking about that. I mean, playing the part of the town curmudgeon that complains about everything. If you do it in your role as an elected official, it's going to bring down everyone. The opposite is true. Now, it's not all unicorns and rainbows all the time. I get that. But if you can bring a positive working attitude, particularly when you have divisions between each other, you don't agree on how things should go, but you can do it in a positive, respectful manner, it does impact your effectiveness and it lifts up those around you. You're viewed as leaders, and that's important for two reasons. You're providing the tone for citizens and how they see you interact with each other, but you also represent the town as an employer, and your employees are obviously going to see how you interact with each other, whether it's positive or negative, and that impacts them as well. You set the tone and you set the example. It is a heavy burden to bear, particularly if that's not why you signed up to be an elected official, to be on the board, but it is something that you have to accept as part of being on the town board. You have actual and perceived powers. I mentioned the citizens that will come up to you and say, I want you to solve this for me. A lot of them think you can just do it individually. Wave a magic wand, it'll solve my problem, because you are the center of the organization. You are where people see where things can get done as individuals and as a body. So it's really important to measure what you say and what you promise. If you can say, look, I agree with you, this is a problem, I'm going to see what I can do, great. If you say, no, this is a huge problem and I'm going to fix it, then you're setting up a situation that may not work out. But just understand that, like I said before, just because you walk out of a board meeting and you're in a local restaurant, maybe even in another town, whatever, and someone from Paonia sees you, you are still an elected official in their eyes. You can never take off that hat. And so you always have to be aware of that when you're interacting with folks and each other. That is just a persona that is with you until you're no longer in office. So discussion and disagreement. What happens when you're not on the same page? I don't know. Do you have a lot of unanimous votes on controversial issues? Probably not. No one does. So it's okay, because that's part of the process. It's okay to have disagreements and have differing visions of that best long-term vision for the town, but you got to do it respectfully. You have to do it because the person that you're talking to, the others there, you're all in the same role. You're all trying to do what you think is the best for the town, but you have to do it within this framework of an elected body. So do it respectfully. No fisticuffs, certainly verbal, definitely not physical, and no personal jabs. Don't do anything to tear each other down individually. When you have something to say, particularly when, like, you're talking about a vote or your positions on something, say it once, make your point, articulate it, and then be done. Let someone else have a turn. There's no need to filibuster. Save that for the United States Senate for as long as they have it anyway, right? Tips on conduct. So this is a little bit of when you have that very difficult, big, hairy issue you can't get out of. Try to find ways out of it. If you've got established rules of procedure or rules of conduct, first of all, make sure before there's a conflict or a division that you agree on your rules of procedure or rules of conduct, and that you agree upon values. If you don't have anything established, there's models out there, and it's certainly something that can be workshopped a little bit, maybe a retreat. There's lots of ways to do that. Some that are in significant turmoil, and thankfully it's a small minority. It comes up from time to time. They actually have to develop a social contract. When someone is yelling at me, I agree that I won't yell back and try to de-escalate. you're not there, and most municipalities aren't. But, I think the most important thing is all of you have come in at different times. You've got different backgrounds and understandings of what has worked for the town and what your long-term visions are. Learn from what has worked in the past. Even if it's something you disagreed with, look for something that you can build on from those past agreements or successes as a way to help shape the vision for the future and your individual conduct with each other. The board meeting, and I will say this emphatically because I truly believe this, is an opportunity to receive citizen feedback and then direct appropriate follow-up to your staff. Citizens have every right to raise concerns, and in fact, it's, again, part of the process. They can be critical about it. I'll get to the staff bashing in a second because I don't think that's an issue, but it does come up. But understand that the best thing you can do is try not to solve the problem that someone's identifying right then, because that's not how effective municipal governance works. If someone raises a concern or an issue, because you're a deliberative body, then receive that feedback, thank the person providing the feedback, and then after the fact, you determine whether or not there's an appropriate follow-up that needs to be done, whether there's an issue to be solved. Then you got to report on it, obviously, at your next board meeting. In extreme cases, someone comes into a board meeting and they say something very derogatory about something that the town is doing, and an elected official will say, "Yep, I can't believe my city attorney did that. What was he thinking?" You can't do that. It's not appropriate, and I don't suspect anyone would ever do that, but it does happen from time to time. You have to have the ability to say, well, thank you for that feedback. And if it's something you need to ask a staff member about later, you do it in the appropriate way. Look, here's the ultimate challenge, and this is really what it boils down to. Each one of you came into the role that you're in with different goals and priorities, things that were your number one issue that you wanted to solve, things that you would like to see get done, that if you were king for a day or queen for a day, you would wave the wand and say, it's done. But here's the thing, you are part of a group of individuals that are in exactly the same boat. And so we can dispense with the bowl and get to the core of the issue. You're never, as a deliberative body, going to reconcile everything that each of you want. So don't try to make that a goal, and don't, as an individual, have the expectation that you're going to get everything you want. It's about a process of working with each other and the burden that you have to bear of sorting out with each other, even people that may come into it with a completely different viewpoint. Understand their goals and priorities, be able to articulate yours, and then have the conversation. This is really important to me. I think I understand this is really important to you. I can compromise this, or I can do a little bit here, but I definitely can never do that. And you need to be clear about that with each other in a very respectful way, because you've got to spend time with each other, and you want to try to move the town forward and implement that long-term vision. But if you can do that, which is a huge challenge, it is very difficult to do, even for the highest functioning municipal governments. You can then work to establish a singular set of goals and priorities, even if it's a short list, that you can lock in on as a town board, that then you can say and give to the staff your vision. Here's what we want to do. We all agree on this. Let's go forward and do this. Those things that are sort of in the middle that you're working through, you continue to work through, but you have to the greatest extent possible, establish that singular set of goals and priorities that then lead to direction for the staff. And then the staff, who is there to make you look good, can get those things done. And as a town board, you can put the check by that and move on to the next one. Use your manager, administrator as a resource. It's important to know that if you think that things are a mess, policy-wise, you got to look in the mirror as a town board, because the town board's responsible for establishing policy. Now, things are rarely ever a mess, but there may be a couple things that stick in your craw. It's important that you recognize that, particularly if you're critical about something that staff is trying to implement. If the policy is not clear, then you can't expect that the direction to be clear. You may have issues with what has been decided prior to your time on the town board. You may have things that you want to get rid of that were done before. That's fine, but just again, resist the urge to say, we're gonna throw it all out and start all over, because you want to try and build on. There are successes, even if there are things you want to change. There are successes. Build on those. Rome wasn't built in a day, and especially in a deliberative body and a democratic form of government, it takes time. So work with each other. Try to deal with your highest priorities first with each other, and that will help direct your staff in a positive direction. Like I said, your manager, your administrator, use her as a resource, because staff is there to help you, make you look good. So no surprises. If there's something that you have a concern about or you need more information on, don't wait till the board meeting to bring it up. Bring it up ahead of time so that staff can properly respond to you during the board meeting, or give staff time to respond at a future board meeting. And to the greatest extent possible, try to speak with one voice to your staff. Again, that singular set of goals and priorities that you all agree on, or the very least a majority of you agree on, to continue having things move forward. So summary, just recognize when your role, make sure you understand others, stay in your lane. You're an elected official, be an elected official. You're not the city attorney, town attorney. You're not the public works director. So make sure you are aware of that. You're part of a team. This is kind of one of my favorite analogies. It's been a hot minute since we've had a championship team here in Colorado, the Broncos. It's been 7 years now, and oh geez, Stanley Cup champions. That was 21 years ago. But if we all remember what championship teams looks like, there isn't any championship team where every player agreed on everything all the time as if they were, clones of each other. That's not how teams work. But the important thing is that in spite of differences, things that they might want to do, and with a good coach, they were all rowing in the same direction, pointed towards a singular objective, and that was winning a championship. Now, the analogy falls apart a little bit because you have to deal with a lot of things as a town board, but it's important to recognize that you're a team, so be part of a team. Even with teammates that you may not see eye to eye with, you still should have as your goal what's best for Paonia and how to implement it. Be cautious about citizen pressures. You'll get them a lot. Take your time, be deliberative, acknowledge when you're being pressured, and try to mitigate that as much as possible. And then check your personal motives. Like I said, you have things you may want to do, but so does everyone else. Work with each other. Identify within yourself what you think is the best for Paonia. Work with each other and strive for that now and in the future. Okay, some quick additional oversight on resources, then I'll see if there's any questions. Our greatest training event, for those that are able to participate, as our annual conference. The last one we had that was our annual conference was in 2019. We skipped 2020 because of COVID and had a special conference in Westminster in September of last year, but we're back on track, and we expect to be back on track for our 100th annual conference up in Breckenridge. It's a fantastic opportunity to network with your peers, and you'll be amazed how much you have in common, issues with your colleagues from every corner of the state, but oftentimes different solutions or different ideas. And it's also a chance to participate in the league's governance, whether it's helping approve the annual policy statement during our annual business meeting, voting for board members, or maybe someday running for the CML board yourself. That's certainly ability to be engaged. And you can see where our next 4 conferences are. After 25, we still have to work on contracts for that. The unfortunate thing is, in terms of proximity distance traveled from Paonia. Breckenridge is going to be about the closest here for a little bit. Our conference, and we expect to be back up at numbers that we had prior to 2020. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. But there's not very many places in the state that can hold a conference our size anymore. And so that's why you see out at Gaylord Rockies in Aurora and Embassy Suites up near the ranch in Loveland, the Budweiser Event Center, and back at the West in Westminster in 2025. If we can get back to Breckenridge or any of those mountain communities, we will, but it just depends on the size of the conference. We do a lot of training and outreach. We have an in-person legislative workshop for those that are morbidly curious about what's going on down at the State House. I find that a lot of our members are very glad that our team of lobbyists are keeping track of that and keeping members informed, because they have no interest in trying to engage on what's going on at the State House. But we certainly do try to keep our members informed. For now, that could change depending on conditions, and registration is open for that right now on our website. We do good governance workshops in proximity to elections. We have 180 statutory municipalities with April elections coming up, and we're in discussions now about how we'll do newly elected training, which is part of good governance. But hopefully as soon as possible after that. It just depends on some other factors, so stay tuned. But certainly we upped our game in terms of webinar opportunities, and if you go to cml.org and look at our training opportunities, you may find a lot. For our municipal clerks right now, and this is important for statutory municipalities like Paonia, we're doing a lot of training on election processes for clerks. It's a multi webinar series that's been ongoing, and second year we've done it, and I know our clerks find them. And we're going to do our fall district meetings again, so look for information. Those are outreach around the state, and hopefully somewhere near you. I should have looked up where we're going to be in your CML district, which mirror the state planning districts, but keep an eye on our newsletter and other communication for information on that a little bit later in the year. And speaking of the newsletter, it's one of our publications. If you get the newsletter in the mail right now and you would like to get it electronically, you get it a few days earlier that way, and we will email it to you. Just email cml@cml.org and say, please sign me up to get the newsletter via email, and that way you'll get it a bit faster. We do other publications. Our magazine comes out, should be hitting mailboxes if you haven't got it already, but our legislative preview edition was just published and has been sent out. And then a lot of other books, many publications, Our Knowledge Now, which tackles individual issues, and a lot of that information is available if you look on the in the CML store on our website, or if there's something you're curious about, do you have any information on, just email us at CML, whether it's me or cml@cml.org, or any individual staff member, and we'll certainly help you out. So that is all I have. Thanks for your service. I know, like I said, I know it's not, every day is not filled with thanks for the time that you spend, and I know you're not doing it to get rich quick. So y'all must love Paonia and want to see Paonia continue to be such a wonderful part of our state. So thanks for what you do. See if there's any questions. Mayor, you got your mute on. There you go.
All right, thank you very much, Kevin. That was very helpful. Any questions from members of the board? Paige.
I have a question, and it is everything CML offers available to trustees simply through emailing? Do we need some kind of a password to get into CML as trustees? And then does the public have the same access?
The public has some access, but whether you know it or not, you have a username, which is your town email address, and a password that was set up for you with the town board. Now, I was actually just, before I got on here, because I know there's been some turnover recently, I'm going to ask, I don't think we've got in our database, which I'm looking at right now, I don't think we've got all of you current in there. And I know that our database administrator is auditing, doing our annual audit of our database right now. With 270 member municipalities, you can imagine we count on a lot of self-reporting and then have to follow up. But so let me answer your first question first. When you are in our database, your town email is your login, and you have a password to log in. If you don't have that password, there's instructions on the login page on how to retrieve it. Don't set up a new one because you have one in there as elected officials. But to your question about whether or not you can access training material or information, you don't really need to log in to get most of it. So every new publication that we do when we print something is sent to every member municipality. So it is probably and it goes to the town clerk in every municipality. So you probably have a lot of our publications in town hall. But if you don't, we have them in our CML store on our website, and you can scroll through there. There are and those are being updated all the time. Probably what for elected officials, though, what's going to be most helpful is past training or information that has come from our newly elected officials workshop. So if there's something you're specifically interested in and you don't want to, trolling around on the website trying to find stuff, just email us. Say, I'm interested in, tips for effective municipal governance as a board member. And we have this wonderful research analyst named Melissa Mata, who is like our librarian. She has all of that stuff that she can send out. Some of it is in the form of links to videos from prior trainings or PowerPoints or publications. I guess that's a long-winded way of saying there's lots of ways to get information. Paige, if it's something that something specific you're interested in, just email us and we'll connect you with the right stuff.
Okay, other questions?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions?
Yeah, sorry, me again. Last thing. So when there are people appointed to other, like the Planning Commission and those sorts of appointed boards, or do they have access to CML information?
Great question. Yeah, that's a great question. Board and commission members are, if we are provided their information, are CML members. And in fact, I was just in Woodland Park on the 4th, January 4th, and was asked specifically to come do some training for them on boards and commissions. They have a handful of appointed commissions, and we actually have a handbook. It's a small mini publication, but tips for effective board and commissions, and background information on open meetings and setting up agendas. So the answer is yes. Looking at your database entries, though, I took another quick glance. We don't have anything other than staff and elected officials. So Mayor, if that's something you want included, then maybe the best way to do it is to have Corinne. I think Corinne, no matter what, I think we need to get you can email me a current roster with email addresses of the board, so I can make sure that Mark gets that updated. But if you want to include planning commissioners or whomever, and you want them in the roster and for them to have access and get information, then give us those too, and we'll put them in there.
Okay, yeah, we can do that, definitely.
Great.
And I have one last question, and then I'm done. We have referred to our town of type of government in various ways. So in the very beginning of your PowerPoint, you referred to us as council manager form of government. So is that kind of our official moniker?
I use that generally because council manager is a form of government that uh, that is primarily identified if you go through the International City County Management Association. That was where that flow chart slide I came from. It's identified as council manager form of government, but in statutory municipalities, you're not a council, you're a board. You don't have a manager, you have an administrator. But so it works the same way. It's interchangeable for those purposes. If you remember, though, I said though statutory municipalities, depending on how, because a lot don't have an administrator and aren't set up that way. Where you have an administrator, it's important to understand what has been established by ordinance or otherwise in terms of the responsibilities delegated to your administrator. With home rule municipalities, you usually find that specifically mentioned in the charter where it says just point blank, the city manager is the chief administrative officer. And what that really means is the mayor has no power whatsoever other than, at least in terms of administrative, oftentimes just to break ties or to run meetings or to, cut ribbons and things like that. Mayors hate it when I say that in home rural cities. But it is true in a bona fide full tilt home rule council manager form of government. The city manager is the chief executive, and then when you get into statutory municipalities, there's some variations there. So it's really important for you to understand that locally. I just use it when I talk generally council manager form of government. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, anything else? Seeing none. All right, public, you get it. Here's your shot. Raise your hand if you want to ask the question. All right, I don't see anything. So thank you so much, Kevin. This has been really good. And after the election, I'm sure we'll be coming back to get newly elected training for our new board members as well.
Absolutely. And look, I mean, oftentimes when, because that was a lot coming at you pretty fast, particularly in the roles and responsibilities stuff. If you think of something afterwards, my email is kbomber@cml.org. Just email me. And I'll respond usually pretty quick, and or connect you with someone on staff that maybe can provide you a resource. But I work for all of you. I said I work for the board, but I work for all of our members, and I want to see everyone succeed and work well together and enjoy it. I mean, it's supposed to be somewhat rewarding, and it can be frustrating to be a deliberative body. And I don't care if everyone's rowing in the same direction all the time. It still is a lot of work, right? So your municipal league is here to help you do that, and to provide tools and information along with that, and then obviously stick up for you at the state and federal level, which is a whole other discussion for another time.
Thank you again so much. And I can speak from personal experience. When I reached out to Kevin, he's been very, very responsive. So yeah, send your questions on. It would be good. Again, thank you for your time, Kevin. It's really been enlightening.
Anytime. I hope to see you all very soon.
All right.
Okay.
All right, everyone. Good night.
Good night.